Number 1. Excuse me for not being an amazing storyteller, but this is definitely a true story. Not me, but my mother used to work at a hotel in Washington, D.C. back in the 19s as a housekeeper/maid. She needed money because she was a refugee from Vietnam. Even though she didn't know much English at the time, she knew enough to get by at her job, and all the other staff and hotel guests loved her because of how sweet she was. Because of this, anytime high-profile guests, such as the Backstreet Boys, would stay at the hotel, the manager always sent my mom to clean the room since she was good at it. Anyway, one day, a guest came. We'll refer to him as Mr. M, because I don't know his real name. He checked into their most expensive suite. As usual, the manager told my mom to take care of his room. As she got there was a "Do Not Disturb" sign, so she told the manager she would come back later. What was weird was that no one was ever allowed in his room. The man stayed there for over a month, and not one time did he let a staff come in to clean. However, he paid a lot, and he gave a warm welcome every time he passed a staff member, so no one paid him any attention. Then one day, people didn't see him anymore, so they assumed he checked out, even though the receptionist had no account of this. Since it had been so long since the room was cleaned, and the "Do Not Disturb" sign wasn't on the door anymore, the manager told my mom to go check it out and try to clean up what she could. As she got to the floor and unlocked the door to the room, a disturbing smell hit her. She couldn't figure out what it was, but she continued to survey the room, which was disgustingly messy. Her words were that it looked like someone had thrown a rave, even though no other guests seemed to have ever gone into the room besides Mr. M. It had looked like Mr. M had deserted the place without telling anyone. My mom was still shocked by the smell, so she tried to track it down. As she followed the smell, she could tell it was coming from the hotel room closet. When she opened the closet, there was nothing but a cardboard box on the ground from which the smell was resonating. My mother's first instinct was to open the box to see what it was and throw it out. When she opened the box, what she saw scared her to this day. It was the rotting head of a young woman, chopped off. My mother immediately screamed and got out of there, where she fainted in the elevator. Once she woke up, cops were everywhere, and the hotel was like a CSI scene. The manager told her that Mr. M wasn't his real name, and he used a fake credit card to check in. The head of the woman was identified to be like a call girl, prostitute-type person. I don't know much more of any nitty-gritty details, but I'm sure one can look it up on the internet for more information. Needless to say, my mom quit that day. Number 2. This is a true story of a haunted hotel room in Oregon. The hotel owners have tried to hush up the story for fear that none will visit their establishment. A woman was driving back to her home in California from Washington. It was late evening, and snow had begun to fall before she finally reached the little Oregon town where she planned to spend the night. Tired and ready for a hot meal and a good night's sleep, she stopped at the first place she came upon. It was an old hotel on the main street. The lobby had a musty door. Her room was on the 3rd floor, room 310. An elderly bellhop helped her with her luggage. As soon as the door was opened, a blast of hot air struck the woman full in the face. With the hot air came something else, something she could not define, but that filled her with dread. It was heavy and depressing, she explained, with a strong scent of the evil. She felt as she was about to faint. All she said was, "It's awfully hot." The bellhop tinkered with the radiator knobs. Then he opened the window and left. The room began to cool off, but the feeling of despair and dread grew stronger. It centered on the open square of black window space. The terror seemed to speak in her mind. She thought she could sense a voice whispering to her, compelling her to do something terrible. "Go to the window," it said. "Throw yourself out." She couldn't seem to resist the urge to jump out the window to what she knew would be certain death. She clawed at the bed seats, trying to restrain herself from walking towards the open window. Terrified, the woman eventually summoned the strength and clawed out of the room. She rushed down to the lobby and shouted to the staff that she couldn't stay another minute. She explained, "I was sure that if I stayed the night, I'd be dead by morning." She was prepared to sacrifice the money she'd already paid just to leave. But when she went, the clerk never asked what was wrong or if she wished to try another room. He returned the full cash amount to her. She checked into another hotel and had planned to be on her way early next morning. Instead, she decided to stay over a day and look into the history of the old hotel to see if she could discover the reason for her terrifying experience there. She visited the local library to make a few inquiries. An elderly librarian sat behind the desk. "I'm just wondering," the woman said tentatively, "did anything shocking ever happen in the old hotel?" The librarian looked at her strangely. "How did you come upon that bit of history?" she asked. "It took the hotel a long time to squash the story." The librarian went on to tell what had happened. One evening, back in 1948, a couple checked into the hotel. The next morning, hotel employees found the young woman's body lying on the sidewalk outside the hotel beneath room 310. The man who had registered as her husband had disappeared. At first, it was ruled suicide, the librarian concluded. But then they pried open her fist and found it clutched a handful of dark curly hair, not her own. So they made a search for the murderer, but he was never found. Number 3. Hello. I got really positive feedback on my first encounter. Because of this, I've decided to share another creepy experience. A bit of background. This happened in the summer, and I believe I was about 12 at the time. I was staying in a hotel in a fairly large city with my mom and my younger brother. We were visiting other extended family, but chose not to stay in their house. My brother is younger than me by a decent amount, so I was usually told to keep an eye on him. On the day we arrived, my mom told me to do just that, while she checked us in and received our room card. So, my brother and I sat down on a couch in the lobby and relaxed a little bit. While we were sitting, a man in about his mid-40s walked into the hotel. The couch was facing the hotel doors, so I got a good look at him. I remember that he was very average looking. Describing his features in detail could generate several different images. The guy comes in and sits on the couch opposite ours. I didn't think anything of it, until I realized that he didn't go up to the counter first. He just came in and sat down. It made me feel a little uncomfortable. I thought that he might have followed us. Thankfully, my mom called us over and told us that our room was ready. We left the lobby and went to our room. Shortly after, we left the hotel to go meet family. I forgot about the man for the rest of the day. We returned at about 7, and my mom told us that we could go swimming in the hotel pool. We all went to our rooms, changed, and went to the pool. A few minutes after we got in the water, the same man from before walked in and sat down. He was wearing jeans and a sweater, so he definitely wasn't going swimming. Again, we didn't think much of it until I could see that my mom was visibly worried. She pointed him out to me, and she said that if he didn't leave within 5 minutes, we needed to go back to our rooms. 5 minutes passed, and he was still there. So we got our things and left. By then, it was close to 8. We had brought a rented movie to watch, so we planned to watch that and go straight to bed. I noticed that my mom was a little on edge because of the man watching us, and I got a little more worried myself too. Halfway through the movie, my mom got up to get in the shower. While she was in there, someone knocked on the door and said, "Housekeeping," in a high-pitched voice. I thought it was weird that the cleaning staff would come this late, but we needed another towel, so I answered the door. I wish I hadn't been so stupid. It was the creepy man. He gave me a smile and a little wave. I just stood there, kinda motionless. My mind automatically went to the worst possible situation. Kidnapping, rape, torture. I heard the water in the shower turn off. He stood there as well for a moment, and then he spoke. "How was your swim?" At that moment, my mom came out of the shower, saw the man at the door, pulled me back and slammed the door. She locked it. Then she called the front desk from our hotel phone to report the guy. I told her to just call the police, but she didn't listen. She then requested we switch rooms. I then heard footsteps stomping down the hallway, away from our door. Thankfully, the guy had left. After that, we switched hotel rooms and didn't see the guy again during our stay. Number 4. I used to work in my aunt and uncle's hotel in a Scottish village about 12 years ago, and the freakiest shit that happened to me was one night when I was sleeping in the staff quarters and heard a banging noise from along the corridor. This was about 3 a.m., after most of the staff had gone to bed. I got up to go and tell whoever was coming in late to shut the fuck up so I could go back to sleep, but the corridor was empty. Well lit, I have to add. This is key. So I walked down the end of the corridor to see if there is any folks coming up the stairs, drunk or whatever. I looked down to see a figure stomping up the stairs. The only way I can describe it is as thought a shadow of a person that was solid. There were no features on the face or clothes on its body. Imagine someone in a black morph suit walking along, but you could see things through them. I turned and ran back to my room and shut the door. I could still hear the stomping for some time, and I don't think I got a wink of sleep at all that night. I didn't leave my room until the sun was shining through my window. I asked a few of the other staff if they heard the banging the night before, but nobody else had, so I didn't say anything. Like hell was I gonna mention seeing shadow men coming up the stairs at 3 a.m.